The corridor at Piazza Armerina in Sicily runs 60 meters end to end. Between 320 and 370 of the Common Era, its floor was laid as one continuous mosaic. The subject is the Great Hunt. Hunting parties, nets, ropes, captured beasts loaded onto ships for the Empire's arenas. Beyond the corridor, the villa opens into private apartments and bath complexes. There are vestibules, a basilica-style reception hall, and a triclinium for formal dining. The complete mosaic floor across the complex covers between 3,500 and 4,000 square meters. One villa, one owner, one program of investment laid in stone across the middle decades of the 4th century. That is the object. What follows reconstructs whose hands produced it, and at what scale that class of hand was operating. The evidence base for this episode is villa archaeology. Piazza Armerina is one site of several. Comparable structures, in dated phases across the 4th century, appear across the late Roman West. Piazza Armerina itself was first excavated systematically by Paolo Orsi from 1929. Gentili's campaigns from the 1950s recovered the bulk of the mosaic floor. UNESCO listed the site in 1997. The owner remains debated. The leading candidates are a retired tetrarch, a senatorial proprietor, and a high-ranking imperial official. The diagnosis this episode draws does not depend on which. A second site is firmer. Carranque, near Toledo in central Spain, comprises a residential block, a basilica, and a palatial structure. It dates to between 370 and 390 of the Common Era. The owner is named on a mosaic inscription. He is Matinus Cynegius, Praetorian Prefect of the East under Theodosius I, dead in 388. Carranque preserves a serving high official's private building project. In Britain, Chedworth in Gloucestershire holds more than 35 identified rooms across 2 bathhouse complexes. Its main expansion phase dates to the late 4th century. Bignor in Sussex runs to over 65 rooms with mosaic floors that include Venus and Ganymede. These are the physical sites. The textual corroboration is short and specific. Olympiodorus of Thebes, writing around 425, recorded the rents of the largest senatorial households of the Western Empire. His figures are preserved at second hand by Photius in Bibliotheca Codex 80. The largest households drew approximately £4,000 of gold per year in rents. That figure has been disputed. The relative scale has not. £4,000 of gold converts to 288,000 solidi. That is the annual payroll of a small late Roman provincial army. 4 scholars hold the framework: John Percival, Kim Bowes, Andrea Carandini, and Peter Brown. While these villas were rising, something else was not. Bryan Ward-Perkins' 1984 study of urban public building in late Roman Italy documents a long pattern. Across the 4th century, civic monuments in the cities of central and northern Italy went largely unrepaired. Forums, basilicas, public baths, the architecture that had defined Roman urban life. Slow withdrawal from maintenance, then abandonment. The cities did not stop existing. The civic apparatus that maintained them had begun to lapse. The wealth that had once funded that apparatus did not vanish, it rerouted. What this episode tracks is where it went. Civic infrastructure unfunded, senatorial estates expanding. That is the asymmetry. Olympiodorus' figure gives the order of magnitude. The largest senatorial households absorbed approximately £4,000 of gold annually in rents. That is the annual payroll of a small provincial army, concentrated in single households across the senatorial class. Sextus Petronius Probus is one named case. He served 4 times as Praetorian Prefect, of Italy, of Illyricum, of Africa, of Gaul. This spanned the second half of the 4th century. His family wealth was attested by Ammianus Marcellinus, a skeptical contemporary not prone to inflation. Olympiodorus' figure was not for one household. The largest, middling, and lesser senatorial households together described a class, not an outlier. The wealth existed. Olympiodorus and Ammianus name it. The villa archaeology shows what was built with it. Piazza Armerina is the visible scale. The Great Hunt Corridor and its associated complex represent a single household's labour investment across a 50-year construction window. Carranque is the dated case with a named owner. Materna Cynegius built his rural compound during his term as Praetorian Prefect of the East. In Britain, Chedworth and Bignor are the provincial expressions of the same concentration. Smaller in scale, identical in logic. Then there is the cultural geography of the class. Quintus Aurelius Symmachus served as prefect of Rome in 384 and consul in 391. This pagan senator wrote his collected letters from villas in Campania, Latium, and Etruria. The senatorial class governed the empire from rural compounds by letter. The geographic center of senatorial life had moved. The empire's wealth had not disappeared. It had moved, and it had built around itself something the empire it had once funded could no longer reach. In this reading, the villas are not luxury architecture. They are the visible form of a fiscal reroute. The pattern is not a Roman peculiarity. Two cases show the same mechanism. Capital with the capacity to sustain civic and fiscal flow converts to private estates as central revenue contracts. The clearest case is the Byzantine Empire under the Komnenian dynasty. The mechanism is pronoia, a grant of state revenues from a designated territory in return for service. It emerges in the late 11th century under Alexios I Komnenos, 1081 to 1118. The context is the post-Manzikert crisis. The defeat of 1071 had hollowed out the Anatolian provinces, the army, and the revenue base together. Alexios granted state revenue to magnate recipients in return for military service. These grants were restricted, non-hereditary, conditional on performance. Under John II and Manuel I Komnenos, the institution expanded across the 12th century. By Manuel's reign, pronoia had become a routine instrument of fiscal and military administration. What began as conditional service compensation had drifted toward routine assignment. Across one century, an emergency response became a permanent transfer of fiscal capacity from state to magnate. Mark Bartusis's 2012 study of the institution names the trajectory. The second case is late Ming China. In the 16th and 17th centuries, the shenshi, the degree-holding gentry, accumulated land through tax shelter mechanisms. The dominant practice was tuxian, peasant commendation, by which peasant landholders nominally transferred land to gentry to escape taxation. Combined with gentry tax exemptions, the state register progressively lost its grip on actual landholdings. The tax base contracted while gentry estates grew. The Donglin Academy, founded 1604 at Wuxi, was not a retreat. After 1620, it became a politically engaged opposition to the eunuch faction of Wei Zhongshen. It expressed a gentry class organizing itself politically, while its economic base rested on the consolidation just described. Ray Huang's 1974 study of Ming fiscal administration documents the gap between gentry wealth and state register. Late Roman senators built villas. Komnenian magnates received pronoia. Ming gentry consolidated estates. Three civilizations, one mechanism. State revenue rebuilt itself as private capital. The pattern this episode names is vertical wealth builds itself a bunker. The bunker is not architectural. Most of these villas were not fortified. The Great Hunt Corridor at Piazza Armerina opened directly to its grounds. The bunker is institutional. What is walled off is capital, from the civic infrastructure it had once funded. In late Rome, that took the form of villa compounds. In Komnenian Byzantium, pronoia estates. In late Ming China, consolidated gentry holdings. Three institutional forms, one mechanism. The Great Hunt Corridor was being laid through the middle decades of the 4th century. In the same decades, the civic buildings of the cities its owners nominally served were entering their century of unrepair. Capital does not disappear when an empire weakens. It relocates. It builds around itself something the empire it had once funded can no longer reach. Omen history examines the decline of past civilizations through signals their contemporaries failed to read. New episodes daily. Subscribe.